Indeed, the words of the Cardinal are quite apt there, that the state of insecurity in the country is making every aspect of our national life problematic. And worst of all is that it appears that the state has no solution to the problem. But we cannot throw up our hands in the air. We have to ask those who seem quite eager, who have offered themselves to govern us. We have to ask hard questions of them as to what they intend to do with the different security problems plaguing different parts of the country. In the northern parts of the country, you have problems with banditry, what is largely referred to as banditry, terrorism, kidnapping, and all manners of problems. In the southern parts of the country, depending on where you look, you'll also have problems of kidnapping, farmer herders clashes, or what has been tagged farmer herders clashes, which encompasses quite, a huge, will I say, plethora of problems. In the southeast, you also have the problem created by, depending on how you look at it. But right now, IPOB and ESN seem to be giving the federal government a big headache, and not just the federal government, also the state governments of some of the states affected, and giving them a headache on how to deal with some of the issues that they're currently facing. So how do the different political parties that are offering themselves, asking us to vote for them in the coming elections, how do they intend to face the security problem? Have they been able to decipher what the issues really are, and what do they intend to do differently about it to bring better results? This morning, I'm being joined by Zubair Abdurauf Idris. He's a senior counselor of the Beningwari Emirate. He holds the title of Damansanin Beningwari. Well, he is not a member of any political party, but if you do know Beningwari in Kaduna State, he's been plagued by very many security challenges, and a journey to Beningwari is not for the faint of heart. So we need to ask him some questions as to what precisely needs to be done to save Beningwari and bring it back fully into the Nigerian state. We also have with us this morning Mr. Ahmad Sajo, who is a member Public Affairs Committee of the Presidential Campaign Council of the APC. Well, we have these two gentlemen for now. We might be joined by other members of other political parties, perhaps while the conversation is going on. But these are the people that we have, and we'll start the conversation. So let me ask you, for someone like you whose emirate, whose council has experienced a sort of crisis that we have seen, a lot of people cannot, I mean, when the very mention of Beningwari elicits fear from them. What precisely do you think needs to be done to ensure that people can freely go to Beningwari and, and people from Beningwari can fully come out? The people of Beningwari who have been experiencing, living a different type of life, I don't want to say under a different type of government, because that might be giving the bandits too much authority. But it's a reality that generally it was seen that there's a different authority, different from that of the Nigerian state in Beningwari. Is that correct?
Well, when you talk of different, government, well, we have government within the government. There are some areas within Beningwari Emirate that particularly the eastern part of Beningwari, whereby the Ansaru, they are the one who are administering some of this territory because they give directives to the citizens who are there, and they decide what to be done. And at times, people also, the locals there, they don't have any option, but they have to take some of their issues for adjudication to all these terrorists. One is because the absence of some of these institutions of government that would normally take care of the people there. Because even the issue of education, when you look at most of the schools in that area, were deserted because they have issued a decree that nobody should go to any you know, school or any form of formal education. And
So
also
there is essentially a government
within,
not recognized
yes,
by the government.
yeah.
I just want to confirm, because when we say that you're a councillor at the Beningwari Emirate,
Yeah.
are you also a part of the Ansaru, or you're part of which government, what layer of government would that be?
You see, the only authority recognized by the Constitution is the authority of the local government, which is the third tier of government. And also, when you have the traditional institution is headed by the emir, and he has his council members, in which we, some of the council members who are the traditional title holders, we are the councillors who normally you know, give advices, you know, to the emir, and also to look at what is happening in the emirate, and also give whatever necessary support for the betterment of the society. So that's what we normally do. But if you look at what is happening in some areas, particularly, you know, the eastern part, particularly 3, you know, ward of Kazage, that is Damari area, and Old Kuyelo, and in some part of a place called Kutemeshi, which is very close to Giwa, local government area of Kaduna State. So you can see that there are presence of Ansaru there. So this Ansaru, you understand, although there are some some efforts in which after, you know, the new GOC, General Lagbaja, which he tried to open up some areas that are considered a no-go area or no-go zone. You understand some of the successes recorded by the GOC and his men has made people, you know, to be able to come back to life. But the problem is, as soon as, you know, he opened, you know, some areas that are, you know, in a very difficult, you know, bad stage, then these terrorists open new frontiers and they go into the hinterland and also try to make, you know, the locals life miserable. For instance, in some of these areas, some of these terrorists, whether you harvest or you didn't harvest, whether you paid money, you know, before you even commence, you know, the farming season, you understand? They will just, you know, go to your farm, whatever, and they will give it to their cattle. And sometimes they will tell you, like, you know, most farmers, you know, the harvest of the cowpea was not done in some of these areas. You will see them pushing their cows into these farms, you know, then the farmers cannot access those farms, and all those cattle, you know, they will eat up everything.
So what I'm curious to know is that this Ansaro, they coexist also with the local authorities. So the Emirate is aware that they're there, and even, I don't know, how does it work?
No, you see, when you say the Emirate is aware, because, you know, this is something that happened over 12 to 15 years ago. Gradually, these people started coming, you know, as evangelists, you know, who are teaching people, you know, Islam. And people they are not aware that these people have a parochial, you know, interest, or they have a motive that they want to now indoctrinate the society. So gradually, they started, you know, manifesting some element of an element of this of their own doctrine into the society. So that's how it grows. So there's nothing one can do, and sometimes they even sack some of, you know, the local chiefs there. You understand? And they said they are the one in charge. So you see, if you look at Bernungwari in that, if you look at Bernungwari generally, you see that Bernungwari is an area that you know, that is so vast that you see that has, a lot of difficult terrain. In some areas, you cannot go in those areas because of the mountainous areas of that place. And some places, you can see that, because of the adjoining forest through Zampara and other places, so that is why, you cannot be able to see how best you can be able to reach out to where these people are. Before Birnungwari to Puntua Road is accessible to people.
We'll come to the issue of forests later because, interestingly, the presidential candidate of the PDP, said he doesn't understand when people talk about forests. He talked about being in his jet and how, when he is in a jet, maybe 30 miles into the air, or 30 feet, he can see the ground and it is shrubs. And, and he said people talk about Sambisa forest. Perhaps our producers will have that particular video on cue and we can listen to what it is that he actually said. But let me come to you, Mr. Sajo. You are no stranger to the issue of terrorism. You were Commissioner for Information in Adamawa State, and Adamawa did witness, was one of the 3 states in the Northeast that witnessed terrorism at its peak. Now you are now a member of the Presidential Campaign Council, and this is one of the problems that we're still facing, maybe not in Adamawa, but at least in Borno, it's still a problem. We've seen it spread to many other parts of the northwest of the country. Yesterday, we understand that your candidate, the presidential candidate of your party, visited Biningwari before he went to the stadium to have his rally in Kaduna yesterday. So, can you tell us more precisely, when you listen to this sort of problem, what is the unique thing that your presidential candidate wants to bring on board that the APC has not already tried within the 7.5 years that it's been in power?
Yeah, thank you very much, my dear sister. It's been a long time we met, and I'm glad we meeting. Let me first start by telling you that when you listen to him, he is not just talking about fiscal insecurity. There is the food insecurity component of it. There's the economic insecurity component of it. The whole thing is becoming, but from what his narration now, you can see that there's a connect. The insurgency and the banditry are almost becoming one and the same thing. Now, yes, like you said, the Jagaban Borgu, the presidential candidate of APC, went to Birningwari, and the Council of Birningwari Emirate, conferred the title of Dakar and Birningwari on him, which, in other words, means the strongest local warrior within the setup. But the important thing in it is that first, we must learn. This thing has to be based on knowledge. And that is what the APC manifesto is talking about. That over the years that this thing is happening, what have we learned from it? He has just given you one lesson, which the APC is studying very deeply now. That these people, sometimes they come looking innocent Islamic evangelists, but eventually they expose certain doctrines that become the security threat that we're facing. Then again, when non-state actors take up arms against the state has some limited options. You can't go full kinetic. You have to go non-kinetic and kinetic. But even if you want to go full kinetic, sometimes they use human shields. They don't have rules of engagement. You have rules of engagement. Eyes are on you. So what we are trying to do now is that the fight against banditry, insurgency, which to me are almost the same thing presently under the circumstances. Ansaru are not bandits; they're insurgents. The best approach, first and foremost, is to intensify our intelligence gathering capacity. Whether they're in the forest, whether they're in the community, whether they're in the townships, what is the level of intelligence we are able to gather about them. How do they operate? What are the layers? What are the structures? What is their firepower? Because we are talking about firepower. You cannot confront an enemy whose firepower you don't know. So what the APC manifesto is talking about is a combination of the kinetic and the non-kinetic approach to fighting these bandits and insurgents. What the APC manifesto is talking about is, look, while we have troops and other security personnel on ground to go all out after these people, we must intensify our intelligence gathering. We must intensify our surveillance, both aerial surveillance and land surveillance. We must intensify, knowledge and based understanding of their mode of operation. You cannot route people out unless you understand the way they operate.
That is not anything new, because your party has been at this now for the last 7.5 years.
Yeah, and
in fact, as a matter of, will I say what it is that the candidate of the PDP is proposing is that he thinks that what has been lacking is leadership and governance and inclusiveness in terms of how this battle has been fought. He thinks that if more leadership is provided, more inclusiveness is provided, then perhaps you might be able to make headway, because that would seem to be the fundamental difference from what he proposes, from what your own party is also looking at.
No, leadership, yes, there's a leadership that has moved. I come from Adamawa State. As at 2015, I do remember that Adamawa was one of the 3 states that they used to call the Bay States: Borno, Yobe, Adamawa. Part of our lands were occupied by Boko Haram. Flags were flying in some local government and the rest. But this approach, intelligence gathering, moving with troops against the insurgents. I remember very well, I used to wear UN jacket and accompany the troops to the war front. We fought them out. Then we also use intelligence and knowledge base to study particularly the procedures they adopt before carrying out suicide bombing, because one of our greatest challenges then was suicide bombing within the cities. We were able to cope all of that. So it's leadership, yes. We're making some gains. You just mentioned about a new GOC changing the nature of the game. We're moving. The thing is, we need to study what has been done before. How did we recover lands in Borno, Yobe, Adamawa? Today, there is no part of Yobe that I know that is under the flag of Boko Haram. No part of Adamawa that is under the flag of Boko Haram. How was that achieved? How did we get rid of these kind of things? Then, the forests are an impediment. Sometimes they go into the forest.
I hope that our producer would be able to get that track of the presidential candidate of the PDP when he was talking about forests. He actually doubts the existence of any forest. He said there is a place they even call Zambisa Forest, and he doesn't understand what sort of forest exists that, people cannot be seen when they're camping in those forests. But let me throw this conversation to Lagos, because I understand my colleagues have questions for you.
Well, thank you, Malkwe. The first of our questions, of course, will go to the gentleman you spoke with earlier, Mr. Idris. How concerned are you? Because, at the end of the day, no progress can be made significantly or sustainably if security is not assured. So the issues that you have raised, and of course, which Mr. Sajo buttressed by saying that it included food insecurity, economic insecurity, and all of those things. How concerned are you of the impact these levels of insecurity may have on people coming out to perform their civic duty of voting in the year ahead?
Well, that's the most difficult situation. If you look at what is happening, the build-up to 2023 elections, most of the politicians, you know, crisscrossing the part of the country, trying to see how they can woo all these voters to vote them into power. But one thing is, the issue of security is something that is paramount, that without security, even the elections cannot hold. So if you look at some of these areas where this insecurity has become the order of the day, if you look at all those areas, there are some areas that I don't think that even the National Electoral Body can be able to deploy it, you know, some of their personnel into these areas because of the risk involved in those areas. Therefore, there is something that, you know, all the candidates of all these political parties, especially the presidential candidates, should have done. First of all, they shouldn't capitalize on seeking for votes of people to go to these areas in order, you know, for them, you know, to get the sympathy of those people. So if you look at some of these areas, they were being abandoned by, you know, their respective governments. Abandoned in the sense that, you know, in most of these areas, you hardly see when either a governor or a government official visit these areas where you have these issues of insecurity in the country. Let me give an example. I always give an example to the area I come from. Birnungwari, whether we like it or not, is the second epicenter of banditry, kidnapping, and terrorism when you take away Zamfara and probably Katsina State. So now, when last have you seen, we have been seeing the governor since after 2019 elections to either sympathize with us or to commensurate with the people of Birnungwari? Until recently, not quite 2-3 weeks ago, even the statement of what is happening of this insecurity, you haven't seen any, we are not seeing any statement that has to do with that. There was a time, twice, the convoy of the emir was attacked. No any, either press statement or anything from the government to commensurate with the people of Birnungwari and also the emir. And now, when it comes to getting the vote of the people, the governor, spearheaded, a move with the APC candidate and moved to Birnungwari. You understand? And therefore, we shouldn't use, politics or canvassing for votes to capitalize on the situation in which people are and also to canvass, for political gain. And I think once we remove, this issue of capitalizing on the situation in which people are, particularly this issue of insecurity, to be able to get votes that nobody will see these politicians after they have, get elected, and also and also after getting elected, and they will remain adamant and what have you. Okay. So the issue here is this. As Sanjo says, we have to look at the issue of what is the problem? What has the previous government do? You understand? As we are going towards the 2023 elections, what are we going to do differently? This is only when you now set an agenda for security and look at all those issues. Where there are successes, how do we now improve on these successes? Okay. Well, where Mr. there are problems that we couldn't achieve much, how do we now, improve and also make that kind of successes? And I think these are some of the issues that the politicians will look at and Mr. also Idris, to be able to make life
easy for the people, yes. But perhaps it will also speak to exactly what role the people have played, can play, or will play in the scheme of things, because security consultants tell us all the time, all security or insecurity is local. What can the people do, and a lot more when we return from this break?
Why we should have Boko Haram. You see, I served in Borno State when it was the Northeast. And as a custom officer, I was patrolling the entire Northeast. So I'm very, very conversant with the vegetation and with the border areas. I still cannot find a place in the Borno area where anybody can hide and cannot be seen. I cannot understand, honestly, the Boko Haram phenomenon. Sometimes when returning from Europe, 30 feet above, I could see a man walking in Borno State. So where is the place to hide? To the extent that they said there is a place called Zambisa. I've been there. I didn't see a forest. It's just shrubs here and there. So, and we have deployed the Nigerian military, which used to be the best, one of the best in the world. They have fought, a number of international arena, and they have excelled. And here we are deploying the Nigerian military with its might and everything, and we just couldn't, eliminate Boko Haram.
Thank you for staying with us. Well, Mr. Sajo, Malcolm was calling for that track. Well, there it is from the candidate of, the question is for Mr. Sajo, not Mr. Idris. So quickly respond to what you heard him say about the fact that there is no such thing as Sambisa forest, but maybe Sambisa area, but not such a thing as a forest that cannot be infiltrated so easily. How do you respond?
This is, well, let me look at it this way. I am not in any way trying to say things that would be bad against the PDP presidential candidate, but I know for certain that not just that there is a Sambisa forest, but Sambisa forest is a gazetted game reserve or national park, and it's gazetted and coded in the National Archives. It does exist. It's a very thick forest. At least before now, I did some media work with Gashaka Gumti National Park, Old Oyo National Park, Kayenji Lake National Park, and Sambisa National Park. So I know the terrain, I know the forest, I know the thickness of the forest. And like I said, we should be very careful playing politics with insecurity. We're dealing with non-state actors that have taken arms against the state. We're dealing with non-state actors that do not have follow any rule of engagement. We're dealing with non-state actors that are capable of using innocent civilians as human shield if they come under attack. We're dealing with a situation where we need a lot of knowledge-based approach to addressing the issues and the situations. We're dealing with a situation that requires that we approach it in a manner that is both kinetic and non-kinetic. We're dealing with a situation where we need to restore confidence of governance in the people so that we can partner the people in routing out criminals, sundry criminals, whether they are bandits, whether they are insurgents, whether they are Ansaru or Boko Haram or anybody. We're dealing with a situation where self-denial of the existence of the problem does not in any way solve the problem. Like I said, it's a compounded problem. It's a problem of insecurity, fiscal insecurity on the people, but it's also a problem that may degenerate into food insecurity, that it's a situation that denies people the right to go for their businesses, markets, village markets, and the rest, which will affect economic insecurity or create economic insecurity. We're dealing with a multifaceted situation. So we should not wish it away by saying we sit in our planes and see people moving in the forest. I don't own a private jet, but at least I have flown even with the Air Force in their helicopters, which is very, very low. And I have seen that to tell me that you can see them from a jet, I find it a little bit hard to agree. But then, you know, if he says so, he says so. But I am saying we need to put a lot more, you know, seriousness in looking at this security situation. This security situation has come a long, long way. We're still dealing with it, and it is spreading. It's democratizing itself from the corner of Nigeria in the northeast. It's spreading northwest, southwest, southeast, and all over the country. And I think it requires more serious approach to address it. We need to also appreciate the roles of our men and women in arms. Some of them get killed. They are not killed by ghosts. They are killed by human beings who have taken up arms against the state. They have gone into this forest. Some of them have been ambushed in this forest. They've been killed. It will be a serious disservice. It will be a serious lack of empathy for us to begin to say that those forests don't exist. These happenings are not happening, that these people did not take off arms, are not hiding, they're not using innocent civilians as human shields. I think we need to rethink all of this so that we can address this insecurity. Like my brother here said, for as long as we do not address this insecurity, we will not be able to hold the elections as we want it to be. And if for any reason insecurity reduces voter turnout, we may have a democracy, but the democracy may not give us the kind of choices that we would have requested if everybody had a chance to go out and vote. So we must address insecurity so that we can get you know, our politics also right, and we can get our economy right, and we can get lives and livelihoods right.
Yeah.
What I expect from all of us that are participating in this political era, whether you are in the APC, PDP, or any other party, is to begin to look at durable solutions to this crisis that we have found ourselves in.
Indeed, Mr. Sajo.
And denial of the existence of the crisis or the existence of the magnitude of the crisis cannot in any way solve the problem.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Sajo. Thank you for being categorical in your reaction to the positioning of the PDP presidential candidate on the presence or absence of forests in the northwestern part and northeastern part of the country. I would like to return to you, particularly on your commentary about how we should study it more. But let me now come to Mr. Abdurrauf Idris. I recall the last time you were on the program when you pretty much intimated us about the presence of Ansaru in Birnin-Gwari, and how I recall how you shared with us how the locals, how the Ansaru insurgents have earned the trust of the locals because they provide security that the government of the day has not been able to provide for them. But going forward now, Mr. Idris, you talked about how Ansaru has been present and it developed over the decade. I'd like you to let us know if this is related to a lack of education in any way, and how it can be, tackled from the root if it is related to lack of education, because the insurgency in the northeast has also been, attributed to the presence of Al-Majiri to an extent. Indeed, the Shekau who was killed in battle has also been identified to be an Al-Majiri himself when he was growing up. So is it related to to lack of education? What is the positioning in relation to that? What is the positioning of Ansaru? What is their own ideological conviction?
Well, the ideological conviction of Ansaru is not different from the one of Boko Haram, because the Ansaru are a splinter group of Boko Haram. And whatever you see Ansaru are doing, they are doing it, in consonant with whatever Boko Haram are doing. but only that, the modus operandi of the two groups, differs. One are a little bit, somehow lenient in their approach, but the other ones, they are so cruel in whatever they are doing. You see, the locals, doesn't have an alternative. Bad governance, increases the issues of insecurity. And also, when poverty is there on the people, poverty make people to be uneducated, and also they cannot be able to see whatever that is going on. So whatever you see, because of the poverty and also the bad governance, because nobody cares about, the lives of those people. And besides, when you look at the economic, benefit of all this insecurity, first of all, the locals there, because all these people, either Ansaru or these terrorists or bandits, as they may be called, you understand there are some benefit in which, the locals also have. So unless or until it is not government alone that will be able to take care of all this issue of insecurity, the society also should rise up and fish out, the bad ones among them. If you look at all these people, they live in this forest. So I believe, this forest exists. No matter whatever somebody is saying, that this forest exists. And these people are right there. And who now supply some of these consumables to them? Who supply food items to them? It is people who are locals there. And in fact, when they are doing the cattle rustling, who normally go there and take all these cattle and take them to the market and sell? It is the locals who do that. Unless or until we identify these kind of things, we won't be able, to address the problem. It is not government alone, but also the society also should rise up. But you see, the problem of bad governance is the cause of this insecurity. Once you have a government that abandons its people, then the people will become helpless. And that is why when this Ansaru came and they offer help to the locals in our area, it's because they don't have alternative. Because those that are supposed to protect them are not protecting them. If you look at all those areas until recently where you have deployment, in the whole of eastern part of Birnungwari, there were no security. When you now say the number of police that are there are not that much. But now we have, some detachment of the military and also the police in those areas. But most of these areas, they cannot do anything tangible because these people, they have already infiltrated the society. So therefore, it is not the question of Almajiri system or whatever, but it is the question of lack of coordination of how people can organize themselves and also to make sure that they are not indoctrinated with alien type of religious obligations that Ansaru are bringing. So these are the situations that we need to look at them.
If you say,
and also we take a multifaceted approach so that, together, the people, the society, the government, and the security agents will be able to tame this insecurity in the country.
So, Mr. Idris, if you say that it's not a product of the Almajiri system, are these people, are they young people? Are they predominantly educated? What's the motivation for joining Ansaru and becoming a member?
Yeah, you see, these people are being cajoled because of the experience they have. You see, first of all, they have their cattle confiscated, their farms, whatever they do in their farms, they have to pay all sorts of levies to the bandits or the terrorists. So at the end of it all, during the harvest, they pay for the harvest. At the end of it all, after even harvesting, they now have a ratio of, for every 10 bags, they give 2 bags to all these bandits, and while they take 8 away. So when the Ansaru offers help to these people, they don't have any other means of protecting themselves because they don't have the means to protect themselves. So they have seen Ansaru as the Messiah that will, eliminate these people who are capitalizing on the inadequacies of lack of protection from the government, which is the primary responsibility of the government to protect lives and property. So therefore, that is why they were able, to now take the offer from the Ansaru, and also some of
Mr.
the locals
Idris.
join this Ansaru because of poverty that is striking, those
Mr.
kind
Idris,
of people.
Perhaps you don't get my drift. I want us to understand the Ansaru. So I'm asking you to describe them, their demography. Are they young people? Are they predominantly uneducated? What is the attraction to becoming a member of Ansaru? That's what I'm trying to help us all understand.
Yeah, what I said, Ansaru is a splinter group of Boko Haram. They have an ideology to which they are antagonists of anything called government. And to them, Western education is forbidden in their own books, and that's their own ideology. And mostly these people, they are not old, they are young, and they always try to cajole young people within the locals so that they can join the group, teaching them, the reward in heaven and what have you, and also because they have money, so they give people money so that they take care of them. And even during festivities, they now distribute food items and what have you to the people, to the locals. So this is something that, they lack from, you understand, the government. So therefore, that is why these people, join the Ansaru. So mostly it's young people who join the Ansaru, as I said, because of the poverty that is striking the people and also the neglect and the bad governance, and that's why these people, join the Ansaru. So it's mostly young people who join this kind of ideology that also, entice them to all sorts of, favors, in the hereafter.
All right. Mr. Sajo, let me come to you now. Earlier, you talked about the need for us to understand, these young people, understand their modus operandi and how to tackle them. But it's taking your APC-led government 7.5 years to, study what's going on, not just in Birnin-Gwari, but in other parts of the north. So isn't it an indictment, so to speak, of the inability of your government to produce results that will lead to a meaningful end to insurgency or banditry, as the case may be in the Northeast? And the second part of this would be some of the solutions preferred in the manifesto of your party going forward in 2023 is an increase in the recruitment, of either the police and the military to check this. But would this be sufficient if we went by the root causes of these problems, as has been identified, partly in this program by Mr. Idris?
Thank you very much. I think there are three issues, or there are three components in this axis of evil mix. First and foremost, there is the heavy weaponization of poverty. If we do not address poverty, poverty will be weaponized by people in power and people who want power, and including bandits, insurgents, and everybody. So there's this weaponization of poverty, which we must address. We must address poverty at its root so as to stop people from weaponizing poverty. Secondly, we must appreciate the fact that out-of-school children, the more you have out-of-school children, the more you have a ready reservoir of recruits for whoever comes with an idea or ideology that is evil. So we must begin to address out-of-school children, which is part of the concerns of the APC presidential candidate and the presidential campaign. And then the third is abuse of intoxicating substances, drugs, and other substances that intoxicate. If we do not address these three issues very squarely. And that's what I mean by understanding some of the root causes. You continuously go, you think you can go kinetic, you think you can just unleash troops, unleash the Air Force with jets. If you are not lucky, you may end up with a heavier collateral damage than the bandits you want to kill. And I told you this, and I'm saying it again. I have practical experience on ground. I have accompanied troops to the age of Sambisa when I was in leadership in Adamawa State. I would tell you that these people use innocent civilians as human shield. So there's a limit to how much you can go. There are surveillance aircraft that go. In fact, some of them with heat detectors, they discover where there are concentration of people. But we have also witnessed quite a number of unfortunate circumstances where an IDP camp was bombed. We have witnessed that. Where a convoy of innocent people walking were bombed because there was some wrong intelligence or because the surveillance did not show. Because the forests are hiding some of these activities. And when these people move and they use human shields, it will be very difficult for you to go after them directly. So we must begin to first increase our level of intelligence gathering, increase our level of winning the hearts and minds of people to become partners in securing their communities. And then we must increase...
These solutions which you are proposing, they have been proposed before now. They were proposed way before 2015. Your party, put out parts of that as the solutions it was going to bring on board. The question is, what results have we seen? I think that's the key question.
And I told you that there is results. There are no Boko Haram flags flying in any part of Adamawa today. There is no Boko Haram flag flying in any part of Yobe today. And there are, appreciable part of Borno that have been recovered. There may be some still areas where there are crises, but there is appreciable part of Borno that is recovered. Even the area around the Lake Chad Basin, a lot of it had been recovered.
My colleague Buki asked you something about, whether the first thing you said it wasn't an indictment. And it would seem that you were repeating the indictment when you talked about poverty and the level of poverty. And you said that those in power can weaponize poverty. Your party is currently in power. It has a duty to lift people out of poverty. The question is, has it weaponized poverty instead? Because you also said, those who are also coming to get power can also weaponize poverty. If the party in power doesn't, do something about lifting people out of poverty, then they have provided a room for those who are coming to grab it to weaponize it. You don't agree?
No. The APC has done quite a lot through the social investment program to reduce the level of poverty.
You saw
but
the latest,
there are issues.
Did you see the latest figures? 133 million Nigerians.
I have seen it, but it's not just APC. It is a global phenomenon. The poverty level in the world is a global phenomenon. It's not just an APC. First, there was the COVID. We're still suffering from the post-COVID virus within our societies. There is the ongoing crisis in Europe. All of these things are affecting the levels of poverty across the globe. And we are not in isolation.
We might not be living in isolation, but,
exactly.
for the people who know about, what it is that we need to be doing, they actually think that this is the time when we ought to be living in abundance. I do not know, if you want to say something.
How can we live in abundance?
I think, when you look at all those figures of 130 million people out of 200 million or more Nigerians that are living in abject poverty, 94 million of those figures of 130 million, they live in the rural communities. So you can see the vulnerability of all these people in the rural areas. And you can see how poverty can breed all sorts of criminality within the society. So I think, you see, the issue of, the government of APC through whatever he's talking about, either, the social investment or what have you. You see, there must be disconnect between the government program, and also the actual issues at stake, particularly within the rural communities. And unless these issues are being addressed, where, the implementation went wrong, unless, those kind of programs are implemented, so that it reach the target, people, that is the rural communities, you won't be able, to get out of poverty. We have to look for a model. Well, agreed, it's a global issue. But we look at Nigeria, that we are now. How do we now tackle all these issues that has to do with poverty?
I think that is the conversation that would need to continue after now, gentlemen. I have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Our producers did try to get across to other reps from other political parties, but sadly they weren't able to show up this morning. It's the campaign season, and it does look like, people are hopping from one state to the other. But we have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on this morning. Zubair Abdurrauf Idris is the senior counselor of the Beningwari Emirate and holds the title of Damansanin Beningwari. Thank you so much for coming on. And Mr. Ahmad Sajo, member of the Public Affairs Committee of the Presidential Council.
Hold any title.
Presidential Campaign Council of the APC. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily as well.